Hi everybody, Colin Stevenson here, joined today again by my hero, John Lenhart. Hi John.
Hi.
Now, today we are going to talk about arguing and how to argue in 3 questions, as opposed to trying to fight your corner where we lose energy. All of our energy gets lost in arguing when we try and argue our corner rather than gain the information from other people. So if you would like to start us off on this subject, please, John.
Right. So again, these topics, we're going forward. We're teaching people how to handle stuff. And it's a combination of all of these foundational videos we've already done. So what we did in the last episode, we talked about resiliency and the ability to grow and handling tension. And just like you said, arguing is people's number one source of losing energy. People lose the most energy arguing with their kids, arguing with their boss, arguing with their spouse, arguing with their friends, arguing online. That's where people just lose a catastrophic amount of energy. Also, we want people to grow in their ability to handle tension. Arguing is a great place to practice growing in your ability to handle tension and actually enjoy more tension if you understand a very simple way to handle every argument. So there are people out there who teach you how to argue, and it's very complicated. I've been teaching people for 20 years how to argue in 3 questions. So what I want to do is I want to share this with you, how to handle every argument in 3 questions. If you follow these 3 questions for every argument, you're not going to lose energy because you're going to be safe the whole time. And you're going to start enjoying the increase in tension because you know what's coming and you know what you're going to do. Now, this is based on, we did a conflict number 3 video. We did this whole conflict series, and the number 3 one talked about being a samurai. Everything I'm going to teach you here is the opposite of how everybody else argues, which is beautiful. And so you got to learn this. So it's a samurai technique. The other thing is we are going to use the communication guidelines. Remember, you ask questions of others, you answer other people's questions, and you make statements on yourself, not about yourself, that's bragging, but on yourself. You say, I think, I feel, I believe. Every bully does the opposite of those 3 guidelines. Every bully refuses to ask questions because they don't want to hear another opinion. They refuse to answer questions because they don't want to state what they actually believe. They just want to pick people apart by making statements on other people. So the foundation of everything I'm going to show you, we've already demonstrated. Bullies do the opposite of the 3 guidelines. If you do the 3 guidelines while you follow these 3 questions, it should be easy peasy.
Yes, love that. And we had a conversation a few weeks ago about something that had triggered me. And I've been doing so well, like I went from mid to high self-esteem. And because it had taken me by surprise and I didn't expect it to happen, I didn't have my 3 questions on hand, and it allowed me to have to defend my corner or then try and come across until I was able to gain that control again, a composure. So it's okay for people to understand that they've been in a habit and the habits have to change, and it's about consciously kind of coming in to putting these things into practice. You know, not every single person when they're triggered, because we know a trigger allows them to kind of go off, whatever's going to happen is going to happen, and you've got to give them that 90 seconds at least for them to kind of come back before you can converse with them. So if the trigger's going off, if we allow people to understand how they can then, as long as they don't react, they can then come back to that.
Right. So the key in these 3 questions is this is an example of flow. Flow is you start consciously and you give up control of the unconscious. We are going to be giving up control in all 3 questions.
Yeah.
The issue people have is, and they argue, they try to take control and they try to make other people understand them. These 3 questions are purely focused on understanding the other person. We're going to try to understand the bully. So we're giving up control. Consciously giving up control is flow. That's how all 3 of these are set up. So just remember, we're always trying to understand others. People accuse me of trying to get people to believe what I believe. And I just laugh because I am just going to present truth and I'm going to understand you. And you know, Colin, you and I are big proponents of karma and justice.
Yeah, absolutely.
I believe sharing the truth with people and understanding others and not trying to control anybody allows me to accumulate enough karma to be a karma trillionaire. And I wrote an article, I'll have a link on here about this because it has to do with arguing. I believe I'm a karma trillionaire because I never try to get other people to believe what I believe. I am always focused on first understanding others. So the first question is to ask somebody their definition of a key word they're using. When they make their argument, and again, remember, we're doing this all in response. So the way all of these are going to start is someone is going to make some global statement to everybody or make a statement at you. So someone says, resiliency is the key to life. Obviously, I'm going to say, what's your definition of resiliency? That's what I do with all the mental health. What's your definition of mental health? You just did this big post, Tony Robbins, on the importance of mental health. What's your definition of mental health? I've asked him that question. He didn't respond. He altered what he did. And a month later, he put it up a different way. I asked it again, didn't respond, gone. What is your definition of what you're saying? And that's what I'm doing. I'm trying to understand them. I don't want to assume I know. I had someone yesterday say, John, do you want to spend your life as a spammer? And I said, well, if by spamming you mean presenting truth to other people, then yes. I answered his question. One of the things I love to teach kids is when someone says, you're an idiot, what's the first thing you want to say? No, you're an idiot. No, I'm not. And the low self-esteem narcissist got you right where they want you, on your heels. I have taught kids to say, what's your definition of an idiot? Or what do you mean by idiot? Like 90% of those things just dissolve. It's amazing. These kids get bullied and all they have to do is say, what do you mean by idiot? And that kid looks at them like, they might go, you know what I mean by idiot. I'm just trying to understand you. And I'll get into this in a second, but it's amazing. These kids are like, why does that work? It's because of the communication guidelines. The bully sits there and can point out contradictions and problems with others, and they know never to share because then they would get pointed out. All you gotta do is get a bully to share because they won't share. It shuts them down because they know they're afraid you're a bully, and they know the minute they share, you're gonna poke holes in them. You're not, but they think you do. So the quickest way is to just go, what do you mean by being an idiot? What do you mean by an idiot? And it's amazing, like that just dissolves the whole situation.
Yeah. And this is what I speak about to a lot of my clients. You usually find people, especially with what's going on just now in the world, people are at each other all the time. And you see that the relationship is maybe going through turmoil or things because they're too close or they're not used to, they've not been friends for a long time because they're just going through the motions. And I always say the first thing to do is always ask the question. So whether it's, even if it's not an argument about what they've said, if it might be something about what they've done, like just ask them why they did it. Was it meant towards me? Was it, literally open it up. So then you're talking to their unconscious. And the amount of people, and I'm talking large scale, that have says to me, Colin, I can't believe how easy it is to change a relationship and to change my life from feeling like a victim to a place of strength by asking one simple question.
Right. So what happens in that 10% where they respond back? So what's your definition of idiot? You know what I mean by an idiot. What, don't you know what an idiot is? So now they're not answering the question. So we're off on a side tangent. We're not even to our second question yet, because this is where I'm like, all of a sudden you can flip this around like a samurai because they're coming at you. You can take a step back and chop them in half, because now you go, I'm trying to understand you. You used that word. I'm trying to understand what you mean by that word. Do you not want to be understood? That's a massive unconscious confrontation, because now what you've said in front of their unconscious brain to their conscious brain is, do you not want to be understood? Because if you don't answer me with your definition, then you don't want to be understood. Then every time you ever yelled at people for not understanding you, your unconscious now is going to start getting you. It hurts. These, like I said, we've talked about bullies reporting people for bullying them because they ask that type of question. So that's just a brutal, like the minute you want to start with the whole, definition, I don't have to give a definition. I'm avoiding giving definition. One of the techniques I use is to ask that question about, you used it. I'm trying to understand you. Do you not want to be understood? Another way I like to go is, well, because they'll go, you know what it means. And I'll go, are you okay with me using my definition for your words? Because that is game over. I've actually had that argument with somebody go, yeah. And I said, well, my definition is this. So I'm right and you're wrong. It's like, what just happened? Oh man, you give me the right to define your words, you've lost. But here's the reality. If you can't define the words you use, you're completely controllable. So me asking you your definition is me trying to understand you and me giving you control. If you don't answer, it's over. If you do answer, but don't give me the definition, now I'm going to be able to do a reversal on you and you're done. You're done. You're going to have a miserable time. My favorite thing to say to somebody is I like to ask them twice because maybe they didn't hear you. What is your definition? And then I ask this question. Are you unable or unwilling to answer my question? Notice, what's your definition of idiot is asking you about this concept of idiot. I say, you're an idiot. You say, what's your definition of idiot? You're asking about my definition of idiot. I don't answer. You ask again. When I don't answer, you go, John, are you unable or unwilling? Oh, that hurts. We were talking about me. We were talking about concept. Now the question went to me because those are the only two reasons I'm not giving an answer. I'm either unwilling or I'm unable. Neither of them are good. I have found people will give the definition right away because this one hurts. No, I don't care about it. Now I want to know why I asked you that question twice and you didn't answer. Was it unable or unwilling? What was it? Let's answer the question. Let's answer the definition. I don't want to do this. So that's how I answer the first, that first question is really giving them a chance. And if they duck it, game over.
Yeah, I love that. So what you're actually doing is it's like a double hit on their unconscious. So the first one they try to block, and then regardless of how hard they're trying to block it, you're coming in with a second hit on it, and it just obliterates any barriers that they had at all.
Right. So let's see what it looks like to go to a second question. And so a lot of times what I do is I'll talk to parents this way. So the first question, if you really think about it, the first question is giving this person an easy question they can explain, they can answer, so that you can understand them. But it's really always setting up the second question. So we just did a couple examples where this person just botched the first question. This person is a mess that you just destroyed, okay? But let me give you two examples like I use with kids. So one of them is, what was our goal today? So you could ask your kids, what was our goal today? Or you could say, do you want to have a good day? So what was our goal today is an open-ended question. Do you want to have a good day? As a closed-ended question. That's not much of a first question, John. Oh, I'm setting up the second question. So the kids can complain about something, and I'm bored or whatever. Well, what was our goal today? Or do you want to have a good day today? Easy question for them to answer. Once they answer it, now the second question always does an application. How does your answer apply to this? So what you could say is if I said, what was our goal today? And whatever they say, I go, well, how does doing that achieve your goal? How does that achieve our goal today? That's an unconscious confrontation. Because you said, and I need them to say it. When they say, this is our goal for today, now their unconscious goes, oh, that's our goal? I'm going to make sure we're doing that. Now you can ask them, well, how is bugging your sister achieving that goal? Yeah. Our goal is to get our homework done. How is bugging your sister? How's your bugging your sister going to achieve that goal today? How does that help achieve our goal? And now their unconscious does the rest. You don't have to do a thing. Is that going to make, so our goal is is your goal to be happy today? Yes. Is that going to make you happy? Bugging your sister? Yeah. Okay. Again, there's two ways to go from that. I want to see the smile on face, focus, and getting all your homework done and not complaining because you're happy. Or, so good. So your sister can pick on you in order for her to be happy, right? Flip the pronouns. Again, unconscious confrontation. What? So that's where you look at those first two questions as the first one is really giving somebody an opportunity to get a quick win. And when they botch it online, I just always go, wow, this person is a narcissist. They are just a flat out bully that I gave them an easy question. I asked them to define a word they used in order to understand them more. The only way you don't answer that is you are a narcissist. And there's a lot of them out there, and it's unfortunate. Hopefully you're not raising kids that are narcissists. So that's why I went to this second step. Second step is to go, well, how would that apply to this? I did that to you, Colin. I said, what was your definition of parenting and leadership? And you gave me a definition. And I said, how does it respond to that? So it's the same technique. It's like, I'm trying to understand you. The third question is where you identify the contradiction if it exists. So I have had instances on LinkedIn and Facebook and in real life where I've asked somebody, what did you mean by that word? And they've said it. I've done this with you. And then I go, well, how would you apply it to this? And you go, oh, I would do this, this, and this. And I go, huh, that makes sense. I learned something. I say thank you. Now, this argument started with me disagreeing with you.
Yeah.
Did you ever see me disagree with you?
Nope.
And I was wrong. What I was going to argue about with you is something I found out in my third question I was wrong about. You never knew it. So the beauty of this 3 questions is if you're always samurai and you're always getting to know that person and they can back it up with a truth, if they can remove a contradiction and you learn something, it's a benefit to you. Yeah. This tension, now you have good emotion. This was fun. I argued with Colin and he taught me something. I kind of want to argue with him again. I'm growing and handling because it was kind of tense. I asked you 2 questions. I don't know if you're going to answer. You answered it. I learned something. So notice manipulation. If you look at this, I gave up control. Even the third question, I don't know what my third question is. When I asked the first question, I cannot tell you my third question.
Yeah.
That's because I've given up control. Manipulation is this. I have a third question I want to ask.
Yeah.
I have a contradiction that I expose in everybody. So I'm going to ask 1,000,000 questions of you until you say this thing. So then I can say my hammer question at the end. And that's when you start feeling manipulated. When somebody asks me more than 2 questions, I sit there and go, okay, they're working towards something. Let's find out what they're working towards, because they're not trying to understand me. They're trying to prove a point, because all you need is 2 questions to understand anybody. And then the third, you can point to contradiction if you ask really good questions. If you're trying to manipulate people, if you ask a question and you don't get the answer you want, you're starting over at question number 1 because you're like, you're not giving me the answer I want. Yeah. So I'm going to ask this question till you give me what I want, because then I'm going to ask you this question. And we all feel manipulated. What I'm giving you is a way to argue that is the opposite of manipulation.
Yeah. And just while you're talking about manipulation there, a lot of people ask too many questions because they don't even know what they want to ask. And it's like they'll just keep prying and prying and prying, and they'll end up going off track completely from where they want to know, and that makes the arguments worse. So what you're giving to people here is that they can ask the right question first, the right question second, and if they need to, they have the third question there to allow it to come in. And it works every time, whether it's name calling, whether it's behavior, whether it's, a disagreement on anything from a TV show through to a taste in food or a way of life. It can be applied to anything, and it diffuses the situation, and diffuse, dissolve, same thing. It brings it down to 0. We've learned from each other. We've grown. We will never fight over this again because you've told me and I've taken the time to understand you. And could you imagine just in a utopian kind of way of living if everyone started doing that? There wouldn't be any drama.
Right. And that's the thing, is in that third question, if you ask them a question that points out the contradiction, if they're mid or high self-esteem, they'll admit they're wrong. What they'll tend to do is they'll want to go back to the first or second question. They'll want to go back and go, I didn't mean that definition to apply in this case.
Yeah.
And then they got to go back to the first and second. Maybe they want to redefine it. Maybe they want to do that, which is fine. But I don't have to argue. I pointed out the contradiction. It's an unconscious confrontation. I'm fine with that. Now, you brought up the point of people asking me a bunch of questions. And so what I always tell people is answer the question. If someone asks you a question, like the guy asked me, do you want to be a spammer the rest of your life? I want to answer the question. I want to understand what he means by spamming, but I'm like, you know what? He's asking me the question, so I will say this. If what you mean by spamming is helping people with the truth, then yes, it's on him now to come back and say, no, I mean spamming is this. Okay, so it's on him to redefine spamming. So the thing is that that's where it's on him. Now, if someone asks me a bunch of questions, this is why I tell people, because I get pulled in on LinkedIn and Facebook to sort out arguments. And the other thing that happens is I get pulled in on people writing emails to their family, their friends, their coworkers, their bosses. It's one of the little cottage industries I have is when people have an issue, arguing with people through emails, I go, let me see the email they wrote. Let me see, what you do. And so one of the things I teach people is answer every one of their questions. So let's say, because what a lot of people do is this, is when I try to do the 3 questions, I ask them what their definition, of idiot is, and they give me, let's say they give me this definition, and I ask them the application, then they'll ask me 5 questions. And so what I'll do is I'll answer all their questions, but their goal is to distract me.
Yeah.
The goal is to go, I'm going to ask you so many questions that we never get back to your question. So they might not answer my second question because they'll ask me 5 questions. I will answer all the questions and I'll say, I've answered 5 of your questions. I've only answered 1 of mine. I'm owed 4 more. I'd like this one answered. And so I keep a question tally. And that's how I stop people who like to ask a billion questions, because some people argue that way. They like to ask a million questions. And I like to let them know, guess what? You just asked 9 questions. I answered all 9. You now owe me 9 answers without getting to ask another question. That's going to be terrible for you. Maybe you'd like to slow down on the question asking. But that's like, it's back to justice and karma.
Yeah.
And a lot of times I'll say, do you think it's right for me to answer your questions, but you not to answer mine?
Yeah, another unconscious confrontation.
Oh, brutal unconscious confrontation. So that's the other kind of like, what your strategy you have there is when people start asking all these questions, they'll do it to distract you. Keep track. I say, what's your question? When I help people, I'm like, what's your question tally at? Do you owe them or do they owe you? And the way I teach people, they're always owed. Yeah. So it's like, I still have 3 questions. Good. Let's ask these. Let's let them know. I'm still waiting. I have 3 questions to ask. I'm going to ask 2 to let them know you have to answer these 2 and be quiet because I still got a 3rd one.
Yeah.
And we're going to go this way. And it really slows people down from asking a million questions, but just answer. The other thing is when you answer their question, you can ask that question. Do you think it's right that I answered all your questions and you don't answer mine? Brutal unconscious confrontation.
What I would like to talk quickly about before we go is about a relationship. Now, some relationships have been together very early on, and some have been together for years. And some of the ones that have been together for years argue about the same thing over and over and over and over again. Now, I know my gran before she passed, right? She had this television program that she watched called Coronation Street. Now, it was on every Tuesday and every Thursday. Nobody was allowed into the house. Nobody was allowed to phone at 7:30 because this was her thing. And it was the only thing she did. Fair enough. My gran was a server giver or giver server. So all she did was give folk, and she said, this is my time. So it's fair. My grandfather never has liked Coronation Street in his life. Now, you're going back maybe 30 or 40 years of every Tuesday and every Thursday. And he sat there with my grandmother and watched this. Do you know, he always used to say, this is a lot of rubbish. She'll you behave. I do everything else. And every single week, every single night, every single time that we get involved in that conversation, my grandpa would say, this is a lot of rubbish. I mean, put me through this again. It's the usual. I mean, what is this like? And, he would come through. Not once did my gran say, what do you not like about it? Or she never asked a question. He just said it was rubbish, but she really enjoyed it. And then that's where the clash would come. It would never get into a serious argument. It was petty, it was petty. But the fact that she never asked the question, what do you not like about it? and he wasn't able to express, she just took it as, you're wrong, this is rubbish, and she's going, no, you're wrong, it's good. No one got to that point of understanding why.
So there's a lot going on there. I love that example because first of all, it depends if she liked the energy, because her watching a show and him calling it rubbish, he was being the bully.
Yeah.
So she could just ignore it and feel good, or she could say, no, it's not, or whatever. And she could enjoy that energy. If she didn't want him to do that, she could have used the 3 questions. She could have blatantly used the 3 questions to say, what do you mean by rubbish? Because see, if you think about it, whatever his definition is of rubbish, he can no longer participate in anything that meets that definition. So if he said rubbish is a waste of time, she could have gone, okay, but it's not a waste of time for me. But that's okay. Every time you do something that's a waste of time for you, you are doing rubbish. Boom, it would have been over. Now, I actually take the grandfather side in this. So I actually would rather him, if I was him, and I teach people to do this, go, why do you like this show? Because remember, we talked about art and unconscious confrontations, and I would rather watch this. Was this like a soap opera show, a drama? What was it?
That was a soap opera.
Oh, that's the best. If I was him, I'd rather watch the show, learn it. I would ask her, why do you like the show? Which is your favorite character? Which is your worst character? And then when you watch that show, whenever she does anything that the worst character does, he could bring that out away from the program and go, what did you think of the so-and-so and then when they did this thing, which is what she's doing right now? And it's like the worst thing in the world you could ever do is watch that show and let me sit next to you and watch it. I help guys deal with their wives with The Bachelor. Do you have that show over there, The Bachelor?
No.
You use the communication guidelines on The Bachelor, and you can just, any reality program, if you use the communication guidelines, it dissolves the situation immediately. I teach guys that. They sit there with wives and go, she just made a statement, so blah, 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 there's going to be a fight. Boom, there's a fight. And the women are just like, because they want the husband to watch it, and he's explaining everything, and it's the truth. She can't argue that it's the truth. So she's like, you don't have to watch it with me anymore. And it's like, but then it ruins it for them because they're watching this show and they're going, oh, I see it now. Yeah, she's low self-esteem. You see what low self-esteem is? Because of blah, blah. You see this? So to me, yeah, I would have, the issue is you feel like you're in control when someone asks you a question. But if you know how to use the question to reach their unconscious and now hold them to that in the rest of their life, it sucks.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's once you get into the habit and once you change your ways of not trying to defend, and I always speak to people about being on the defensive. You're the weak party that's not going to win. That's why you're pushing against somebody that's pushing at you 10 times as hard. When you take the step back, you know that tension, if you're pushing against a wall and the wall disappears, you fall forward. It's like that same reaction when it comes to arguing. So when you take a step back and you ask that first question, that's the point where they can no longer push because they stop.
I think I told this story to you before, but it fits so well right here, is that I was the number 2 person in a company. I reported directly to the owner. And the owner was a guy who loved to walk in and just make his points, try to get you to do what he wanted you to do and do that. And one time, I did this one time, the owner did that. And what I do is I explain back to him what he's saying. So what you're saying is you want to do this, you want to do that because of this. Is that correct? And he looks at me now, he feels like I'm agreeing with him because I understand him. And people confuse understanding and agreement. And he goes, yeah. I go, okay. Do I understand you? And he's like, yeah. Do you understand me? Do you understand what I want to do? I haven't said it yet. And he looks at me like, no. And I said, here's the thing. Right now, who's the person who's in control of this argument? Who understands both sides? In fact, If I'd have gone first, I might have made some points that your explanation would have destroyed. So right now, while we're talking, I am changing my argument so it's unbeatable. Why would anybody want to talk first? And he never, ever went first after that moment again. That's the real, you talk about defensive, the real weakness, the real low and no self-esteem person is the person who rushes out there with their opinion, trying to get you to believe, regardless, like, I don't want to understand where you're at. I am going to get you to agree with me. That is so defensive and low and no self-esteem. And the smart people always understand the other side so they have the opportunity to change their argument and be able to nail it. That's how, when I watch, and the samurai videos like that, the person charging first is the loser. Yeah. And that's what the samurai watching the two went, this isn't even a contest, because that guy hasn't taken a backward step. He's never going to charge. That guy's eventually going to charge. This is pointless. So yeah, when I watch people charge in, I go, why would you do that?
And there's many people. In fact, the majority of people charge in now because nobody wants to ask a question. And it's all because society and the planet, the majority, especially the Western world, their self-esteem so low and they've been so broken through bad behaviors, bad thought processes. It's brought them down. So the majority of people feel that they need to attack in order to defend. Whereas if you just take your step back, ask your question, it can literally dissolve everything.
Yeah, because it worked on them. They got bullied by a narcissist. It worked on them. It's the only technique they have. They're a narcissist. They're trying to bully you. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to help people get beyond resiliency. We're trying to get people to high self-esteem and flow.
Yeah. And you can only do that by starting with definitions and then asking questions to understand and then moving on. Now, thank you. And I hope today people have learned how to argue properly and how to defend themselves in a way where they just let go of control.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much, John. I'll speak to you soon. Take care.
Bye.